Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Lee Cantor here with Katie Galley and my co-host on the Supply Chain Now radio show, Mr. Scott Luton. But Katie, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. It is time now for Supply Chain Now Radio, powered by APICS Atlanta. Broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the Southeast, Atlanta, Georgia. Supply Chain Now Radio focuses on the best of all things supply chain, the people, the technology, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day.
All right. Well, Scott Luton is Executive VP with APICS Atlanta, and APICS is the leading industry association dedicated to end-to-end supply chain management, and he's brought with him a whole slew of folks. Welcome, Scott.
Good morning. How you doing, Lee?
I am doing great. And what do you got in store for us today?
So we have a full house. We have a posse with us today, to steal a term from one of our guests, Greg White. So let's go around the room. We are pleased to be featuring for our seventh show, Greg White, founder of Blue Ridge Global. Good morning, Greg.
Hey, good morning.
And we also have Elba Pareja-Gallagher, founder of Show Me 50 and chair of the APICS Atlanta Gender Gap Task Force. Good morning, Elba.
Good morning.
And finally, Albert Sorto, Vice President with the National Minority Trucking Association, and he's also a member of our APICS Atlanta Executive Advisory Board. Good morning, Albert.
Good morning, everyone.
Glad to have everybody today. So we've got a great conversation teed up. We're going to start, as we typically do, with 5 things to know in supply chain now. And it's, as we all know, it's a busy time for supply chain. Lee, you got your Christmas shopping list finished yet?
Yeah, we're working on that. But this year I've been doing more online than offline.
Interesting.
How is that, am I normal or am I the crazy person?
Well, you know, I might have a factoid about that. So our number one thing to lead off with, things to know in supply chain now, e-commerce is killing it. According to the U.S. Census, estimated retail e-commerce sales in the U.S. in the third quarter 2017 were $115.3 billion.
Wow.
You know how much of an increase that is?
That was mine.
That was yours. Yeah.
Is that everybody?
Yes.
You're making it.
My wife is determined to drive these e-commerce numbers. So this is a whopping 15.5% increase over third quarter figures in 2016. So folks are embracing e-commerce like never before. And I think many families, you know, I know we were kidding, but I think a lot of families are using e-commerce almost wholly, 100% for a lot of their holiday shopping this year. It seems like more so than previous years.
Hey, Scott, I've got a factoid for you.
Okay.
I work in e-commerce strategy, actually.
Yes.
Day job is I work at UPS. But I read something the other day. There are more Amazon Prime members than people who have landlines in America. And so just to set the stage there, so the 90 million Prime members, there's around 330 million households. Population in America, about 150 million households, 90 million Prime members.
You just broke Ma Bell's heart, I think, with that factoid. But it's quite a beast. So it's good to see, and it opens up a ton of opportunities in the supply chain space. Number 2 of our 5 things to know in supply chain now. So when I think of e-commerce, one of the immediate things I think about is quick delivery, fast shipping, right? So according to Deloitte's 32nd annual holiday survey, I didn't know they put that out, 54% of holiday shoppers surveyed said that fast shipping meant 2 days or less. So does that sound about right? I mean, is that the, a year ago, I don't think it would be 2 days or less. It may be, a week or less, but is that what we expect?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people have been spoiled by, to mention them again, Amazon with the Prime 1 day and even same day shipping. So
is that time frame getting lower and lower?
Undoubtedly and rapidly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same day, eventually, I think it's going to be the expectation, maybe same hour. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, 2 days, I thought that was an interesting trend. So most of the holiday shoppers surveyed said that fast shipping meant 2 days or less. Number 3. So speaking of drones and speaking of automating things, so we had a APICS Atlanta board meeting earlier this week, and one of our board members is Colton Griffin, who is founder and CEO of WMS Site. Many of y'all have probably met Colton. So he was sharing some information about a project that he is collaborating on. He is partnering with Squadron Systems, which is a French company, And they're piloting a new drone technology here in the U.S. after several successful pilots in France. They're using semi-autonomous drones for verifying inventory for full pallet positions in warehouses. Semi-autonomous, as we all may know, I had to refresh my memory. The drone flies itself. It just needs someone to start it and monitor it. They have found through their pilots 3 to 5% faster inventory counts than a person doing it manually. It's safer. You imagine folks maybe climbing up a racking system to a second or third level. It eliminates that. It improves inventory accuracy. It's able to conduct inventory more efficiently and more often. Who loves to count inventory? Any hands raised here? Okay. We don't like it.
No one's hand is up.
No one,
for the listeners.
Let the machines do it. So, in Colton, their future vision is to make this fully autonomous, which is a really neat concept. So, if you're interested, APICS Atlanta is working on a event in the new year to showcase this technology and showcase this initiative. But if you want more information in the meantime, check out WMSite. That's WMSIGHT.com, or reach out to Colton at cgriffin@WMSite.com. So neat stuff.
That's a huge labor saving.
Right. And the way that drones are being implemented is they're doing it in such creative ways. Like at first, everybody thought, oh, it will be somehow dropping packages from the sky. And it's evolved into all kinds of clever ways of leveraging that technology.
There's also humanitarian uses, in remote medicine, areas, right. You can send a drone out to drop, vaccines.
Supplies, medicines, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Lots and lots of applications. This was neat. It was kind of local as well. It was neat to hear about this over a steak at the City Club.
Funny to hear them talk about drones and a pilot.
Yes.
At the same time.
All right. So number 4 of our 5 things known in supply chain now. So one figure that we regularly track here at Supply Chain Now Radio is the Purchasing Managers Index report, the PMI. The PMI index basically tracks activity in the manufacturing sector. Is it expanding or is it contracting? The index is typically tracked on a state level, a regional level, and at a national level. So in the recent release with the October numbers, the Georgia PMI slipped to 56.4, which is the lowest monthly reading since January of 2017. Anything for everyone's benefit, anything over a 50, an index reading of 50 implies that manufacturing activities is expanding. But anything below 50 means it's contracting. So it appears that our rate of expansion here in Georgia has slowed a bit. And one factor that the report pointed to was a slip in new orders reported by manufacturers. And that trend existed. The lessening of new orders existed in Georgia. It existed regionally across the Southeast and across the country. So in light of all the great signs and metrics we see, that was not as exciting of a development here in Georgia. So back to our holiday shopping, we've got to do something about these new orders, right?
Come on, let's go.
And that leads us to number 5. So 5 of our 5 things known in supply chain now. Let's talk about opportunity in the supply chain field. So the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that jobs in logistics are projected to grow 26% from 2010 to 2020. I think that's pretty conservative. I think it's closer to 50% maybe. There are a wide range of estimates that claim for every one qualified applicant for these jobs, there may be 5 to 10 openings. So crunch for talent, right? One of the challenges that many believe the supply chain space is up against in this war for talent is awareness. So do students and young professionals know of the lucrative careers and opportunities that supply chain offers? I think we can all argue that there needs to be a lot more awareness, right? So as part of the APICS Atlanta Skills Gap Task Force initiative, we've committed to moving the needle when it comes to this awareness, right? I'm pleased to share that we partnered with the leadership of a Metro Atlanta school system earlier this month to introduce supply chain management to a group of 4th and 5th graders.
Start them young.
Start them young, that's right. And boy, we didn't know what to expect as we went in there, did we, Albert?
It was very surprising and very refreshing at the same time, because we set up the supply chain where we're trying to explain to them the supply chain. I think it was a brilliant idea from Scott to do it with Lemonade. And as
brilliant and Scott never comes to the same sentence ever.
And as we set the project, we just sort of step back and
Let
ask
them go.
and let them go at
Right.
it and try to forecast what would be some of the potential issues that they could see within the supply chain. And they were very right on point coming up. Well, this could happen. That other thing could happen. And,
Wow.
and it was just a great experience.
It was incredible. It was very, and it was rewarding. We had a team of 5 volunteers. So basically, we went in spent 45 minutes with 4th graders, 45 minutes with 5th graders that had no idea what to expect. We went in with a game plan, and boy, these 4th and 5th graders picked it up. Just we didn't have to spend 10 minutes even to discuss and define the concepts of supply chain management. It was incredible. We could barely keep up. I think before we left, these kids knew a lot more about supply chain than I do. And we built it really around defining the basic concepts of supply chain management, and then we had an exercise on the end-to-end lemonade supply chain. So we kind of made it, brought it home, made it tangible. And hopefully, of the 50 folks, there's 25 4th graders and 25 5th graders. Hopefully, the idea was that leaving there, some of those 50 folks would have a eureka moment and, would better understand new career opportunities in the supply chain space. So it's really
consider it, because that's part of the challenge, right? People aren't even aware enough to consider it as a career path.
Absolutely.
I can tell you that when I was a kid, I did not say I want to grow up to be in supply chain.
It was a cowboy
Race car driver
and
was
someone
first.
in a
Supply chain was somewhere down the list. Yeah.
Well, that helps. That's the problem, right? That's the big problem. I know we're all laughing about it because probably none of us uttered those words in 4th and 5th grade, right?
And then that's us being guys. Elba, how many women are...
exactly. That's yet another problem,
even
right?
A smaller
that's
subset, right?
Yeah. And we know that people who don't see people like them in leadership positions in organizations don't even...
connect the dots that it's
right.
even possible.
Yep. So congratulations for bringing that program.
Well, APICS credit. APICS made it easy by rolling out some tools, and then thanks to Albert and some folks in his network, we were able to bring 5 or 6 folks out to this elementary school. And the good news is, we had a debrief with the school district staff. It was well received. We're going to be back in January with 2 new schools, and our plan is to do it once a month at a school across Georgia, not just Atlanta, but.
And it's always elementary school.
Well, we're not brave enough to go into middle school and high school yet. We're working on that. We've got a curriculum for it, but. Right now, we're going to keep it easy and probably rinse and repeat for a while until we have figure out our plan for different schools.
Cool.
So, big thanks to Joshua Rhodes with the Hahn Company. He has stepped up to be our APICS Atlanta Skills Gap Task Force Chair. So he's going to be leading our efforts in January. If you're interested in being part of that, volunteering, you name it, shoot me an email at evp@apicsatlanta.org.
And then, are you looking for more schools to do it?
We're looking for more schools. We're looking for more volunteers. We're looking for more props to make it more fun and engaging. So,
and so you're using lemonade?
We have lemon,
practice.
Juice. Yeah, the whole 9
Best practice.
You had me at lemonade.
Fantastic. So I should say, before we move on to our first guest, I should say, if you have not signed up yet for the Logistics Market Snapshot that our good folks at the Georgia Center of Innovation for Logistics puts out, it is a great piece of market intelligence. It's about 75 pages long. Just kidding. It's about 7 pages. It comes out each month with a wide variety of intelligence across the supply chain space. So sign up for that at georgia.org, I believe. All right. So let's move along. Lee, we've got a wonderful leadoff hitter in Mr. Greg White. So for those of you that don't know, all 7 of you, Greg White is the founder of Blue Ridge Global, as a cloud-based supply chain planning and demand forecasting company located here in Atlanta, right by SunTrust Park. So Greg has more than 20 years of supply chain experience at organizations including Servigistics and JDA Software. He's also successfully transformed supply chains for more than 100 companies, including Fortune 500 companies such as Best Buy and Newell Rubbermaid. I'm also pleased to serve with Greg as part of the Georgia Logistics Summit Executive Committee, where we're planning to have our best summit yet, right?
Darn Skippy.
Greg's got a very interesting topic to explore with us today. How can retailers compete against Amazon? So
you spend the first half of the show just talking about Amazon. Now you're
absolutely
bringing Greg in.
Is there anything else to talk about, really?
Best frenemies, I think. The cool thing. So we were talking, Greg, kind of down in the lobby earlier about how we've got to do business not like it's 1987 anymore, right?
Right. I mean, really, it's the consumer that's changed as much as anything. if you think about the days of Mad Men, if you've ever watched that, the consumer was driven to be the person that the marketing organization wanted them to be. And today, the brand selections that they make are more a reflection of their comfort with their own persona rather than helping them shape their own persona. So the tables have really turned in retail and particularly in e-commerce. And largely Amazon is responsible for that. They've set the 2-day expectation that we were talking about. They've set the ubiquitous nature of availability, and they've really cornered the market, as Elba was talking about. They've got their own set of customers. I mean, Amazon Prime customers spend $1,300 a year on Amazon.com. That's a number that most retailers would die to have, right?
Absolutely. The Amazon effect,
and they pay for that privilege.
They do, but you get some really good
stuff,
benefits.
right?
You get
so that changes the game.
Streaming.
But when you're a member of something, that changes kind of the relationship.
It's been described as a ring fence, right? It's a way to create and connect that affinity. Lots of retailers have done it. Amazon or Kroger has their Kroger Plus card, and lots of
Costco.
other retailers. Right. It's a proven methodology, right?
So let me ask you. So of course they've changed the game. We've all heard about the Amazon effect. We're all expecting different and fast delivery and all aspects. The DMV, I want to be served in less than 2 days, right?
Good luck with that.
Even the DMV has improved.
So they've changed the game, but does that really make Amazon the enemy?
Yes and no. So the way I like to think about it is enemies with benefits. It's there's no way to not compete against Amazon, and there are lots of ways to participate in the Amazon ecosystem. So, Amazon is going to make 50% of all online sales this holiday season. That's up from 38% last year. So, Are they the enemy? Yes, there's no doubt. When companies like Walmart, they go out and buy Jet to try and get in the e-commerce game, that shows you just how prominent this company is. But at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity to participate in that ecosystem and leverage your own niche. I mean, there are lots of, if you do, and I try to participate in Small Business Saturday, there are lots of companies that have a niche and have a similar following. They just don't have the distribution that you can get on Amazon. And you can participate in that. You can be a fulfillment center for Amazon. You can sell on Amazon. You can sell direct. There are even options. So there are companies out there that help retailers compete. There's a company particularly called Radial that essentially duplicates the Amazon fulfillment network without you having to be in cahoots, so to speak, with Amazon.
Well, so let's talk more about embracing it. So what are some of the other things that retailers can do? To embrace it's not the future, it's embrace the here and now.
Yeah, it is embrace it. One is to cease denial. There is a lot of denial out there. A lot of companies say they want to be the Amazon of their industry, and if it's not too late, it is inevitable. In many industries, it's already too late, but it is inevitable that Amazon will be the Amazon of whatever industry we're talking about. They've proven that. I mean, they bought a $13 billion grocery retailer on a whim, right? They're a $200 billion company with over $50 billion in cash. They can create or buy anything that they want. And that's everything from retail organizations or retail channels to technology to even supply chain. They're even building their own supply chain because they were hurt so bad in 2015 by the inability of the current supply chain network to fulfill at the pace that they expect, they and their customers expect. So we have to embrace it and kind of own it, accept it, and then deal with it. And the way that retailers can deal with it is they've got to recognize what their niche is. They've got to generate cash, which is not new for anybody in retail. And they've got to embrace new technology.
Right. It's the cash.
Yeah. Cash is king.
It was supposed to be king.
Yeah.
Now, this type of disruption isn't unusual. This happens periodically. I mean, at one point, Walmart was the person that was like, hey, Walmart, if you're not in Walmart, you're missing out and you got to work around our rules. And then Amazon came, and now it seems like we're having the same conversation, but with just a different company.
Yeah. And, this too shall pass, right? I mean, remember when we were so concerned about Amazon or Walmart putting stores
Out of
everywhere,
business, right.
And AutoZone with auto parts
Right.
and various and
And
sundry
Sears
other,
at one point was Amazon.
right. That's a tragic story in and of itself,
Yeah.
isn't
Right.
it? I mean, the original mail order company can't survive in what is effectively a mail order world.
Yes. To that point, I was trying to explain to my kids what a wish book was as we were talking about
Right.
holidays and Christmas and all. And boy, deer in headlights, they couldn't believe that we'd page through and circle and,
And waited 3 weeks. or
Yeah,
4 weeks.
right.
What were you going to say?
No, Amazon has altered retail, has changed the face of retail as we know it.
No doubt.
But not only have they affected retail, but they have also affected transportation. Because with the new expectations they've set for the consumer, now the last mile programs have become very popular. It's a new phenomenon, So they're popping up all these distribution centers throughout to be accessible within a day to 2 days, to their consumers. So that has affected to where some opportunities have been lost, but new opportunities have been created.
Yeah, they have same day delivery now, and the fellow who delivered my same day, I just tried it just for fun. The fellow who delivered it, talk about a non-traditional channel, was in a '96 Lexus LS 400. So obviously he had dozens of other packages in the car, so that's what he did. Right, he's like Uber for packages.
So we were talking cash generation. In terms of things retailers can do. What else? Let's talk about competitive advantage, right?
Yeah, you've got companies have to recognize their niche. So I spoke at a trade show in a distribution industry, also an industry that Amazon is going into, B2B as well as B2C. And what was said there was, I can't conceive a world where Amazon could do what we, this little $40 million distributor, can do. And again, that's more of that denial. But in truth, what that company was talking about was their technical expertise. So you've got to learn to leverage what is your niche or your expertise. If that's technical expertise, or if that's a really, really niche market, then leverage that and figure out a way to capitalize on it. Additionally,
you have to kind of identify your superpower, and a lot of it, I would think, in today's world is going to be the relationships, right? And these personal interactions that you're having with your customer that Amazon is going to have a difficult time.
Well, I wouldn't say Amazon's going to have a difficult time with anything, but that makes a good point.
To Albert's point, it's that last mile. It's that the last interaction is a human being to a human being.
Yeah.
And that's where the small guy has a shot, I think.
But yeah, I think where the smaller companies can really make hay is identifying a very niche market and going after it strongly, and then utilizing a broader distribution channel to spread that market. I mean, think of old brands that are now ubiquitous, right? North Face started out as a few people selling jackets, right? So the opportunity to expand that is still there. You have to think about how you can do that in conjunction with your enemy with benefits, in conjunction with Amazon as well.
So speaking of enemies, and embracing the enemy, right?
Yeah.
That's a big part of the message we were talking earlier today about, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the thing that Amazon has done that has made them enemy and can also make them friend or at least associate is that they have changed the way that they look at demand, the way that they look at the marketplace. So if you think about in our industry, so we have this forecasting and demand planning package. And if you think about the old days, the 80s, as Scott was talking about, we used to forecast items, right? Items are sitting on the desk in front of us right now. And we would say things like the seasonality of that item or the trend of that item or what that item's going to do. Well, look at these items in front of us now. What have they done while we've been sitting here? Not a thing. So what are we really predicting when we're forecasting? We're really predicting the consumer. And that is the gap that Amazon has bridged. And that's the gap that companies need to embrace and they need to address with today's technology. You can't use 87. Is that the year you picked?
Yeah.
I'm not sure why you picked 87. You can't use 87 technology in a 2050 world, and you have to start to predict what the consumer is doing. And that's a gift that I think both niche players that we were talking about and Amazon can really do is connect.
Now, when
with
you're talking about that,
consumer.
are you talking about like machine learning and artificial intelligence and that type of thing?
All of that, yeah, for sure. I mean, there are technologies that are required to do that: machine learning, predictive analytics, AI. There are a lot of ways to approach that.
So now a lot of these companies aren't embracing that technology yet. I mean,
they aren't yet because to date it's been the 1987 style of employing that kind of technology is very, very expensive, tens of millions of dollars to do. And what I think smaller companies, the benefit that they have is that having sunk a lot of that cost, they can go to a lower cost, more rapidly deployed and ultimately more advanced technology, because the cloud. There we go. We had to say cloud.
You got to every supply chain conversation.
If you think about what the cloud really is, there's no magic in the cloud, as we've all seen from clouds. It's really that there is unlimited power in the cloud, right? That it's a bunch of computers out there that you can run the most complex, the most accurate algorithms against, and get an answer back in a reasonable amount of time without spending tens of millions of dollars.
Right. It's becoming more and more affordable.
Yeah. So companies, that's one of the things that companies can do is to embrace new technologies. And they can do it and leapfrog the traditional players. Some of the traditional players we've been talking about today, Walmart, Kroger, some of them, they're saddled with literally hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in old technologies. Some of those technologies from as far back as the 60s and 70s. So that ability to kind of start.
Well, you're kind of jumping steps because you didn't have to have that legacy equipment.
Exactly.
And then you can just start fresh with the new latest and greatest.
Yeah.
And just start running.
Yeah, no doubt. And those opportunities are out there. I mean, that's what we've provided in our product. And that's what other providers have in other products.
So you were talking about the 2050 world we live in and, predicting the future, just bringing it back to just predicting next week. Let's talk more about the planning side.
Yeah,
you've been involved in transforming a lot of different supply chains. How do we get better at planning?
Well, the key is really to forecast that consumer. It's really to understand the consumer and what drives them. It's funny to say consumer, right? Because sitting around this table, every one of us is a consumer. That's right. So let's just say predicting us, and think about that as a task. That's no small task, right? But there are indicators, believe it or not, that companies can key on that can actually help them understand what you're going to buy next.
They know me.
Right. And it's not what you bought last year. I mean, if you think about how commerce has changed over the years, what we've used in the past is what people bought last year, or moreover, what the items did last year. But what we need to do is use indicators that help us determine it. So what you can do is identify those indicators and then forecast what those indicators mean in the broader spectrum of the consumers. So, if I hate this example, but I haven't gotten off of it yet. So whenever Justin Bieber tweets about something, 15-year-old girls respond, right? I mean, it's a fact. And it's likewise for, various other items. Right? That when someone in social media talks about it, people respond. When weather changes, people respond. So what you've got to do is start to forecast the indicators and then assess how people respond to those. Some of those indicators are easier to predict than others. Social media is much easier to predict than the weather. Believe it or not, even Justin Bieber is more easy to predict.
So you get traditional forecasting, and we're going to keep picking on 1987, and forecasting
is
now.
Is that when you graduated high school?
No, I pick a different year each time, I think. But, so let's talk about how forecasting has changed, and what are you seeing there?
Well, what I'm seeing now is there's a lot more science. We're using a lot more of the available data. If you think about, particularly in e-commerce transaction, there is a ton of data generated. The retailer that you purchase from They know where you came from. They know what kind of device you were on. They know the path that you took. They know every ad, site, URL you passed on your way there. They know what was showing on the screen when you selected the item that you selected. They know what was showing in the shopping cart when you went to pay for it. So they can use all those things as correlates to determine what influenced you to make that buy. Did you click on an ad, or did you pass an ad, or what?
But
so you've got to use the wealth of data that's out there.
That information is like factual demographic information. But from that, aren't they also making assumptions about psychographics and saying, okay, this person's an early adopter. They're going to be more inclined to purchase the freshest, newest thing, and they're going to be less inclined to purchase last year's stuff.
They are. That's more of, so a lot of the psychographic and demographic data is more marketing oriented. Is this likely to appeal to somebody? Not necessarily does this convert somebody into a paying customer. So what you've got to look at is, and think about a retail store. They set up the store a certain way with a main aisle or a racetrack, is what Target likes to call it. And they put certain things in front of you. Think about the impulse racks at a register.
Right, the end aisle, right.
They're putting those impulse racks on the internet today to try and drive you to make a decision. So it's more tangible than psychographics or demographics. Those are indicators. Those are indicators of groups of people or types of people or ages or whatever. But this data that we're collecting today indicates what Albert is going to do. We are not forecasting groups of customers. We are forecasting
individuals.
Albert. Right.
And I've noticed how they use that because, sometimes I'll Google a product, an item that I want to buy. Then I get on LinkedIn and I see an ad for that product. Then I go to Facebook. Then they're bombarding me with that product that I Googled a few days ago.
Actually, that's Greg.
So
Greg is monitoring.
Yes.
So, and just for you, Albert, that doesn't happen to anyone else except you.
No. But I do see. I've become fully aware how they are using these algorithms to predict what product is going to be popular, how to properly stock those inventories. Just a decade ago, because I come from the retail sector prior to getting in transportation and logistics. I remember we had to predict 90 days in advance some products that were coming from China. We needed to place the orders well ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And if we missed the mark, we missed it. And then
it's gone because it's 90 days.
We will have to take a loss on that product that we thought was going to sell, but it would flop. Now I think with all this technology in place, with these algorithms, I think they can make a very educated prediction what item's going to move and how much that item's going to move.
Now, Greg, are you saying that like Albert was saying, that you're going to be wrong less with this data?
You are. I mean, if you think about how forecasting has been conducted, to break it down into its simplest parts, it's saying whatever happened last year in aggregate is going to happen again this year with some measure of change. Now you're completely turning that on its head and you're saying, forget about last year in aggregate. Let's talk about Albert right now. Sorry, Albert, we're picking on you.
That's all right.
If you've got your Christmas list, I think I have your Christmas list right here.
I only have Albert's from 1987.
But it really changes the game. So the way that this technology evolved was really interesting. So after 9/11, there were companies trying to predict who was going to be the next shoe bomber, for instance. So they were not forecasting the likelihood that a terrorist event was going to occur. They were trying to forecast who's the next guy who's going to try and blow up his shoe, right? So honestly, I use that as a bit of inspiration to develop this forecasting methodology and the concept of forecasting the consumer, not forecasting the items.
Right.
And that's an important transition. And finally, big data, there we said it, right? Finally, data is available that allows us to do that. Yeah,
it's
so
bingo. We have cloud, big data. What is the other words?
Supply chain. So finally, there's robust enough data available to do this. And finally, to go back to our last keyword, cloud, finally, there is enough processing power because of the power in the cloud to utilize that data. It's not practical to take a system from 1987 and give it the data that we're talking about. It just can't process it.
Right.
It can't do it.
So it's tough to dive into the conversation like this in a 20-minute segment. So if we can kind of conclude this segment, supply chain planning is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Improved, more accurate forecasting is a big critical element that Blue Ridge Global helps our clients with. What else? Tell us about what Blue Ridge does to really increase and improve the performance of supply chain teams.
Sure. So you've got to take these really advanced concepts and you've got to deliver them in a way that someone can actually use them. A screen or a set of spreadsheets or a bunch of data on a screen is not the way that technology needs to be delivered today. Technology needs to give you the answer, right? The whole benefit of processing all of this data in the cloud is to give you the answer. It's to create the plan. It's to plan ahead, but respond rapidly, and then give the answer to the user based on the business rules and the ecosystem lead times and order frequency and the desired service levels and all of those sorts of things. Look, the bottom line is what you're trying to produce is no stockouts, right? No surplus and no surprises. And if you can do those three things in retail, then you can compete with anybody, including Amazon. And to do that, you have to have the technology that literally gives you the answer, where your users aren't trying to discern after all of this advanced science has been used. They're not trying to discern what the answer ought to be. You don't want to say, hey, we did all these calculations. Here's a bunch of options for you. You want to say, we did all these calculations. We understand the totality of your environment. Here is what you need to do. And if you can deliver an answer that complete, then you can really change things. You can do it cost effectively and you can do it rapidly.
So to learn more, check out BlueRidgeGlobal.com. But y'all have got an interesting event coming up in April, Blueprint 2018. It seems like if you want to avoid stockouts, surpluses, and surprises, a lot of answers can be found at this event, right?
Undoubtedly. The beautiful thing about Blueprint is it's April 22nd to 24th, right? So the beautiful thing about Blueprint is it's a group of practicing professionals getting together to share ideas. So our customers, Ace Hardware, Racetrack, and a number of others, they get together and they say, this is what we did this year. And it's not all about technology. There's also a lot of people intervention in the organization that's required. So they all get together and talk about the successes that they've had and share ideas. And we give them ideas and challenges as well. And it's a great sort of roundtable session as much as learning about our technology. It's learning about technology in the workplace in general, and also how you use it to better your organization.
Perfect. Well, we'd encourage our audience to learn more, BlueRidgeGlobal.com. Check out and sign up for Blueprint 2018. That comes about 2 weeks after the Georgia Logistics Summit, which is going to run April 9th through the 11th.
So you and I will be able to go, Scott.
That's right.
We'll be free at that point. Yeah.
No excuses.
Yeah,
no
that's
excuses.
right.
That's right. And this year, of course, the Georgia Logistics Summit is being co-located with Modex and its 30,000 attendees. So 2 great conventions coming up in April here in Atlanta, the supply chain capital of the East Coast. So, Greg, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you sharing some of your story with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks.
Okay, so moving forward here on Supply Chain Now Radio, we are very pleased to introduce a great monthly guest and collaborator, Miss Elba Pareja-Gallagher. Elba, good morning.
Good morning.
So let's talk about how we can all get better at what we do and lead more effectively and progressively.
Awesome. Yeah, so just a quick plug for APICS Gender Gap Task Force, right, is a terrific branch of APICS where we're really trying to raise the conversation around gender at work and how can businesses include more people in conversations to really get the best ideas and innovation. At Show Me 50, our vision is to see 50% women in senior leadership positions across America. I think, and we think, that the more transparent and inclusive cultures that we have, the more great ideas come out of your businesses and the greater profits you can return back to your key stakeholders.
And I do want to double down on that. We do think. And we've learned a tremendous amount of ideas and concepts and things we can put into practice by partnering with Show Me 50 and partnering with Elba. So glad to have you here once again for our 7th show.
Yeah, thank you. So we call this segment the High Performance Minute, and it's actually a little bit more than that, right? Because really, when you create these transparent, inclusive cultures, what you're doing is creating more high-performing teams, right? Unique and specialized knowledge that you might otherwise miss if you don't look beyond your normal circle of influencers. So with that, we usually bring up topics in the news that stir up conversation. So we just had a big headline. Can anybody tell me in the gender world, what's going on in the media and in the world?
This is also called our most uncomfortable.
That's right.
Minutes, right?
That's right. That's right. But let me hear from the guys at the table. What's going on in the news when you think about women at work?
Well,
come on,
wow.
be brave.
This is what
something just came out yesterday. Somebody got fired.
Yes.
Somebody? It seems like every day somebody's getting fired.
But yesterday, somebody big just got fired.
That's right.
Or the
Well,
day
two
Matt Lauer.
people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Matt Lauer and Garrison Keillor.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, right?
Right.
So the Matt Lauer incident, right? And I think I saw an interesting segment of his co-host and the new co-host, and they just struggle with, a person you love that you really admired so much, just this behavior was just so unlike them. And I think it's a great time to have these conversations because I think both men are uncomfortable and women are uncomfortable because men are uncomfortable.
I can assure you that men are uncomfortable.
Yes.
I know,
and
right?
if you don't talk about it, you'll stay in a persistent state of uncomfortability, right?
Exactly. And we make no progress,
That's
right? And in leadership, we're always taught to assume positive intent, to have constructive conversations. And so why can't we have these conversations? And so that's what I am here to tell you in the inclusion and high performance message today is use these headlines as an opportunity to have a conversation. And in fact, last week, it was before Thanksgiving, I was able to have a great conversation with a man and a woman in my office where we just talked about two things that when you think sexual harassment or harassment in general, it goes beyond just sexual harassment, right? What are we doing as leaders to make sure we create an environment that's inclusive where everyone feels comfortable and that they belong? And so we talked about a couple of quote unquote possible harassment situations that may not be sexual harassment, right? Profanity is one of them. In a lot of workplaces, there's a lot of profanity used. And the higher you go, it seems the louder and more frequent it gets. That may be a deterrent to pulling in people that may not feel included in that type of environment. So one challenge we talked about in this conversation was how do we feel about that? And we had both ways. We were like, well, women cuss a lot too. And that's true. But maybe are they doing it because that's the example that's been set and that the way you feel included in an organization is because they see people with power talking and behaving that way. So I guess the point is just have these conversations. How do people feel? Why do they feel that way? There's no right or wrong answers, right?
So use the headlines for more than just wrapping fish with. We need to use it to have conversations and make progress.
Right. Conversation
Absolutely.
starters. But in the regarding the sexual harassment element of this, do you find that certain industries that are maybe more creative and more where at a level of edginess is kind of the norm or more normal than maybe an accounting firm?
Like radio?
Not radio. Not radio. But is that, I don't want to use it as an excuse, but maybe it's cover for this type of behavior that attracts a certain type of personality type.
I don't know about that, but I don't think it is reserved for any one type of organization or another. I think that your traditional corporate America environments are so much more structured and have so many checks and balances and more power spread across more people. Whereas maybe in some smaller areas or some industries, you have very concentrated power, as in the case of the entertainment industry. And that tends to create more risk, right? Concentration of power, less transparency. Whereas I think larger organizations and, the corporate America types just have more checks and balances in place. And so I would suggest that when we talk in Show Me 50 about transparency being part of the reason why women can't get to leadership positions, that's an example. If you only include certain people and only those people have access to certain information, it limits the ability of everyone to have true equal opportunity for career advancement.
So in a way, it's a testament that diversity is actually helping break down these walls. Because if we didn't have that diversity, then that behavior, that problem will be ongoing.
That's exactly right. And it's really diversity of thought, right? I think that's what companies need is unique, specialized ideas that you can have that other people don't have. That's the competitive advantage in retail or e-commerce or anything, right? So how can you get more people feeling included and belonging at a table to make decisions about business performance.
Because the diversity creates a level of empathy, because people can't see other people's point of view, but when they're around the table, then everybody gets to speak and be heard. And then that opens the minds of the people that maybe aren't around.
Absolutely. There's a certain level of awareness. And if you think about it, if corporations and any type of organization had more diversity at the top, certainly more women. Imagine a world where there had been 50% women leading all these organizations, NBC, whoever. Maybe there wouldn't be this kind of problem, right? Because there would have been a coalition of women already talking about things and making people aware and raising it before it became a catastrophe for NBC and for corporations, probably.
We can't let men off the hook there, though.
That's right.
I mean, it doesn't take women in positions of power to create a respectful environment for women or minorities or anyone.
Right.
What it really takes is an awareness and transparency, and it takes an active effort to create a comfortable culture.
A willingness.
Right. It becomes cultural, right? I mean, you hear a lot of profanity in supply chain, right? There's a lot of untoward behavior.
Never heard.
No. There's a lot of untoward behavior in the entertainment industry, but that's because it's become cultural, because it's been allowed, and it's been equally allowed by men as more so.
But that's when you know
women.
we've made progress. When it's not a woman that calls it out, it's when a man says this isn't acceptable. We're firing this person, and it's not driven by some brave woman that has to risk her career and her livelihood to step forward. It'll be a guy that sees it and stops it.
That's right. Yeah. So I want to leave you with 3 action items.
Yes, perfect.
Because I know we got to wrap it up, right? I get the signal. So we always make things actionable, right? What can we do to go back in our workplaces and in our circles? So here are 3 things. Number 1, be aware. Just be aware. When you go into rooms and you're in meetings, just look at the composition of the room. Why is it the way it is? Particularly notice how women might be behaving with men. Do you notice any men making comments, that not that you have to call anything out, but just it starts with being aware. Okay. The second thing is be smart. Go out and read an article or 2 about what's going on, so that, to your point, what are the perspectives? How are people saying? What are they doing? A great book that just came out is by Gretchen Carlston, and it's her book, Be Fierce. I listened to the audio book on my road trip to Florida for Thanksgiving. Fabulous kind of 101 for men and women about sexual harassment and harassment in general. It's a great book. And then lastly, be happy. This is a great opportunity, and let's look at it constructively and not like we should be in fear of going to work and we can't look at a woman and, we're so afraid to give somebody a hug or whatever the case may be, right? Let's be happy and use it as an opportunity to have a conversation. So be aware, be smart, be happy.
Love it. And for more information about the APICS Atlanta Gender Gap Task Force and all the great things that Show Me 50 is doing, a lot of what Elba mentioned today, check out showme50.org. And again, our chapter is very pleased to be continuing our partnership with Elba and Show Me 50. So thank you. One more action item. Have we identified the lean-in circles for our first one for next year yet?
We do. So another thing that Show Me 50 does is we engage men and women in these types of casual conversations and teach leadership, management, and innovation through lean-in circles. We meet once a month, the 3rd Monday of every month. Our next one is January 16th. And you can find information on our website, showme50.org.
Right after Clemson wins the national championship. That's terrific. Thanks, Elba. Just kidding. So the other one other thing I will mention is we're working on a workshop to basically train board members on how to be better advocates for policies of inclusion, right? And don't want to unwrap that just yet, but we're working on a lot of things with our great partner over at showme50.org. So thanks for being a part of our show again today, Elba. Okay, so next on Supply Chain Now Radio, we are very pleased to be featuring Albert Sorto, who is Vice President with the National Minority Trucking Association. He's also an APICS Atlanta Executive Advisory Board member. And I like to say that supply chain makes it happen, but it's actually Albert that makes it happen. This guy is everywhere. He is a hands-on leader. We were connected probably about 6 months ago.
Yes.
And since that time, I bet he has been involved in no less than 100 projects. Most recently, he has welcomed with open arms APICS Atlanta's as a new member with the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We really appreciate that. building all sorts of bridges for our supply chain community. So, Albert, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So, I was new to the NMTA and the critical mission y'all do. When we met 6 months or so ago, tell us more about what NMTA does and how you serve the industry.
Yes, the mission with NMTA it's really to educate, provide resources and networking opportunities for our members. Many of you may not know, but after the restaurant business, transportation has the highest failure rate within the first 12 months. About 80% of truckers go out of business within the first 12 months. It's not because business is not there. We all know that business is a $714 billion industry. 70% of everything that we ship, that we deliver, goes by truck. So the business is definitely there. What's happening is that a lot of entrepreneurs go into the trucking industry because they were probably drivers for a company or were under a lease under a company. So they see the potential, they see the business, but they really don't. They were only seeing it from one perspective and they don't have the complete business acumen to run a company. So as they venture into transportation, they're coming into it still with a driver mentality instead of an entrepreneur mentality.
Well-rounded, how to run a business, beyond maybe some of the key skill sets that make the transportation industry happen, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So our goal, just yesterday, actually, when you called me, I was on a call for about an hour and 30 minutes with I
had to go through Albert's agent to get him on the show today. He's a busy guy.
And I was talking to this lady she's taking over for her father's trucking company. He's had the company for about 15 years, but due to health problems, he's stepping down and she wants to take it over. But she was explaining to me, I don't know much about it. I consider myself smart. I can research it, find out, ask people, but that would take me a long learning curve. So she was very glad that she found NMTA, that we're here in Atlanta. I was trying to give her as much guidance as I could over the phone, but obviously it's a lot to take. But the main thing is that a lot of people go into the business without having full knowledge of it. So they put their life savings into buying new equipment, buying a truck, without realizing all the other aspects of running a trucking company. They're not thinking of safety and compliance. They're not thinking about marketing. They're not thinking about sales. So a lot of them quickly find themselves not making enough money. So what we want to do, and when I explain to people what we do as an association, the quickest way for me to describe it is like we're like a chamber of commerce, with the exception that we only focus on transportation and logistics. Those are the only things we focus on. If it has to do with transportation logistics, we have those resources.
You help build businesses in that transportation logistics space, especially with folks that maybe are newer and are looking again for resources that help them be better, well-rounded business owners, right?
Exactly. So a lot of the new commerce into transportation, they go to what it's called load boards, where third-party logistics providers post freight that they need to move. And you do find some good freight there sometimes, but for the most time, that is just a tool to get back from a delivery that you made, but should not be your main way of creating revenue. So going back to minorities, every other week we get a phone call from corporate America or from a federal agency looking for, hey, NMTA, do you have a list of women-owned trucking companies that you could refer to us? We would love for them to come and bid on this project. Or do you have a list of veteran-owned trucking companies? Or do you have a list of ethnic minority-owned trucking companies? We have this project. So the education we want to impart to our members is that there are all these other opportunities, billions of dollars in the transportation industry that are allocated for minorities to bid on. But the problem is that I would say 90 to 95% of minorities are not even aware what a supplier diversity program is, much less what the protocol is to the bidding process, the RFQ, the RFI, all those things. So that's the educational part that we want to bring to them.
So we're not going to be able to dive into this ELD topic at length, But first off, I want to make sure we mention your website, minoritytruckers.com, right, for more information on NMTA.
Yes.
Is that right? So let's talk about electronic logging devices. Talk about curveballs. There's been a lot of change and a lot of regulatory policies come out. Give us a quick update of what's going on with ELD.
Well, it's not very popular right now because for the last few decades, hours of service have always been part of the industry. The exception is that right now is done on a piece of paper, on a login book, and it allows you some flexibility. Now with the new mandate on the electronic login device, the unit is GPS enabled. So if you arrive at a shipper's facility or at a receiver's facility, and there's an extensive delay, it's eating away at the hours that a driver can actually drive. So now that is cutting into their earning potential. Where with the standard logbook, they could just put themselves out of service and wait for the 10 hours to be loaded or unloaded to pass, and they still have their hours, to drive. Now that's not.
So Greg is not only checking out people's holiday shopping list, but he's also checking in on truckers. Greg,
monitoring their driving. Yes.
Now, the other thing to understand is that trucking in the United States is a small enterprise. 80 to 90% of the trucks you see out there are small companies that on average own a 5 to 9 truck fleet. And based on the latest reports from the ATA, the American Trucking Association, only 80% of the trucking industry has adopted the ELD. A lot of them are still waiting till the last minute because they want to keep that flexibility. Some of them are still even planning to protest 1 week before the holidays in DC to try to see if they can get it pushed back or get some other.
And what's the date, Albert? When is it?
December 18th is when it goes into effect. Now,
as in 2017?
Yes. So less than 30 days.
A couple of weeks.
Less than 30 days. A couple of weeks, actually. Now, there's been some good things, though. There's been some changes that I think I did a presentation on this at the
Georgia Manufacturing Summit.
Yes. Sure I think a lot of things have changed since then. Now they are giving some leniency because they know there's hundreds of thousands of trucks that still have not adopted the ELD mandate. So one of the things they've done now is that they will not put a truck out of service if they don't have the unit installed at this time. So that putting them out of service is not going to take effect until April 1st, 2018. If they get pulled over by the DOT and they don't have this unit, it will not affect their CSA score, their carrier safety score, which it would be very detrimental to a trucking company if it affects their safety score, because that means their premiums for insurance will go up. So that's another thing that they've given it some flexibility. And just a couple of weeks ago, the FMCSA announced that they're looking into do a study to see if they provide that flexibility that the paper log had on the ELD for those instances where you hit Spaghetti Junction and there's an accident that's going to take 4 hours to clear, to where it can set up ways for the electronic logbook to be edited that will allow you a little bit of flexibility for when those things happens. Or the most important thing for truckers, they feel that they should be able to pull over and sleep when they're feeling sleepy, not when the machine is telling them pull over and sleep now. Because it's happened to all of us where we've had a long day and for whatever reason we're not sleepy. So what we have the flexibility of saying, okay, well, you know what, I'm going to get on the computer, be able to catch up on some work, and go about my business. Now, that's the part that makes it unpopular because truckers are finding this to be a little bit intrusive for them.
So if certainly you're helping businesses tackle this ELD, I know you've got workshops, you've got some great deals with partners to help equip small fleets, medium-sized fleets, you name it, with the technology. And of course, in the broader sense, you're helping these businesses grow across the board with a variety of different challenges that we all face as business owners. So appreciate what you're doing and really appreciate you being part of our executive advisory board and all the great bridge building that you're doing on behalf of the APICS organization. So check out minoritytruckers.com. You have a big event coming up where I know you keep a busy schedule.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. On December 9th, we're going to be hosting an event called Coffee with Truckers. It really is to reach out to truckers in the Georgia and the Atlanta community and just make them aware of services by NMTA and resources that they can reach out to, but also entities such as ACE, which is Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs, the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and the Georgia Hispanic Construction Association.
When is Beers with Truckers? Is that in January?
That's going to be actually in the spring.
Okay.
Or wine.
Yeah, or wine.
It better be good. Better be good coffee. You're inviting truckers.
That's right. Well, again, thanks for what you do. We appreciate that. Appreciate you being a part of our organization. What a great conversation today, Lee. We could have added easily a second or third hour. But on behalf of APICS Atlanta, I want to thank Albert and Elba and Greg for being a part of the show. I want to finish just on a couple bullet points real quick. As I think all of our guests mentioned some of the upcoming events. It's a busy time for organizations and industry associations. But I want to mention a couple of things APICS Atlanta has coming up. We have a project management and supply chain webinar coming up on December 6th as supply chain teams are using formal project management methodologies more and more to tackle some of the change we've all referenced today. So check out that hour-long webinar on December 6th. We have we've got our Joint Industry Association holiday party with a variety of partners to include Twin Engines and the Georgia Manufacturing Alliance on December 6th that evening. You can learn more at twinengines.com. Next webinar on Lean. I know Lean's been around, seems like, since
1987.
1987. Excellent, Lee. Yeah, that's great. But we've got a Lean Fundamentals webinar coming up on December 12th, which is going to be led by our new APICS Savannah chapter president, Jeff Leroy. So check that out. Dave Maddox, president of the CSCMP Atlanta Roundtable. They have a great event featuring Chris Gaffney with Coca-Cola on December 12th. Great partner over at CSCMP. We just had a great joint event in October that focused on Aerotropolis. That was the word of the day for several.
That was bingo last time.
Yes, that was bingo last time. But check out what they're doing there on December 12th with Chris Gaffney. You can learn more at cscmpatlanta.org. And to get information on anything you heard here today or any of these events, you can send me an email at evp@apicsatlanta.org or check out our website, apicsatlanta.org. And again, we appreciate the time and all the great perspective and content shared today. Lee.
Good stuff, Scott. And thanks to APICS Atlanta for bringing us the Supply Chain Now radio show. And like Scott said, go to apicsatlanta.org for any and all information regarding supply chain in the Southeast. This is Lee Cantor for my producer, Katie Galley, and all the Business Radio X family saying we will see you next time on Atlanta Business Radio.